The Texans are 7-5 after losing to division rival the Titans. Is it time to hit the panic button, or is there more football left to play? We're going to talk about all that and more on this edition of The Bullpen.
To throw the punches on. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Tagged down for a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to The Bullpen. As always, I am James Roy, and with me is Tom Jabria. Tom, how are you doing?
I've been better, sir. I have. Not going to sugarcoat it. This was not a loss that I had on my schedule. It was not a good look. You know, there's a lot of questions, but we'll get into it. I do believe there is a light at the end of the tunnel, though.
Yeah, a stat that's not being thrown around a lot, but this is the last division rival that DeMeco Ryans had not lost to prior to today, because it's the only one that he swept in 2023. And just overall, it's a tough pill to swallow. There's a lot of things that I think you've watched me deny them all season long, but I think a lot of Texans fans have kind of entered into this like, oh, well, the hype's there. This offseason, we were declared Super Bowl contenders, so that means that the roster is ready and we've matured past where we actually are. And I mean, honestly, I'm processing out loud this, and I'm trying to like reset my expectations so that I don't like weigh myself down too much mentally over it, because that's how I've always been as a football fan. And so you're about to hear me do that right now for the next 20 to 30 minutes. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. We're going to talk about this Texans-Titans game, even though I really would rather not. And let's just start. I like to start here because I feel like this is a question I've asked you several times this season, and I just want to know if anything's changed on your end in terms of your thoughts on it. How do you feel about CJ as a quarterback, his performance, the way he's played so far this season? Is there any alarms being raised with the consistently I don't know how to put this. I don't want it to sound like a certain way, but I'll just say it the way I was going to say it. With the lesser than it was last season. Some might call it subpar, some might call it a sophomore slump. But what are your thoughts on CJ's performance, especially after this game today?
I really think that everybody needed to pump the brakes a little bit and temper things going into the season. He had a phenomenal rookie year. You know what I mean? And everybody thought that was like the floor, when I think that might be more closer to the ceiling of what CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans offense could be. I don't think that today was a thing that says, okay, this is what CJ is. He struggled. Today was one of his poor games of the season. You know, and guys just expect greatness from him every time he touches the football. And sometimes I think he struggles with certain things. Sometimes I think the offense as a whole struggles with certain things. There's so many different variables going on with the offense and CJ Stroud. I don't think the CJ's bad. I don't think that, you know, he's not as good as he could be, or we think he could be. I think he proclaimed that he was a top 5 quarterback in this league, and I think he will be when it's all said and done. It's just, you're going to get everybody's best shot every week. And he's not sneaking up on people anymore. And the Texans aren't sneaking up on people anymore. Everybody circles them now as a team to beat. So you get everyone's best. And on a day where I thought the Texans were good, not great, you know, they made silly mistakes that they probably didn't need to make. They got Tennessee's best. This was probably one of the more complete games Tennessee's played, and it was just enough to beat the Texans. And I hate that. Nothing feels good about losing to the Tennessee Titans ever. But when you step back from it, because immediately after the game I was hot too, when you step back from it, it took Tennessee's literally – Will Levis was flawless. You've been on here time and time again, you know, just saying Will Levis is not a good quarterback. We saw all the goofy mayo commercials with Will Levis pretending to do the splits on jars of mayo all day long. It's not good. Today, Will Levis looked really good. He looked closer to what CJ Stroud is now than what a lot of people thought Will Levis was a couple years away. He played a really, really good game. I mean, when you look at it from that lens, you know, any team can lose to any team on any given Sunday. This weekend, if you looked around the league and you saw some of the scores, you know, Dallas beat Washington, and Washington's in Washington. They've got no business losing that team with a backup quarterback. So to me, you know, Cleveland with a backup quarterback went in and beat Pittsburgh. I mean, they were at home, but these are things where that happens throughout a season. Now, as fans of the Texans, I think it's worse because they're not, you know, 8-4 like we think they should be, or you know, 9-3 or, you know, 10-2, whatever people think the Texans should be because of the way they played in these games. And I say all that to say, I feel like it'll be all right. I feel like CJ will get better, and then we'll be going, remember when we thought something was wrong with CJ? Man, we were dumb.
Yeah, I mean, and dude, I think you described it well. Will Levis put up what was very much a good CJ Stroud game this season in every way, which is that, I mean, you said that it's the most complete game the Titans have put up. I think that's an important distinction because it was not a very complete game, and there was a lot of avenues with which the Titans tried to give this game to the Texans with the way they played. Like, you know, a pick six to Jimmy Ward when they were up by 6, looking to make it a 2-score game. Those are things that would have destroyed many teams that are like the Titans that are not very good, but I guess I don't know if they got help from the Texans. However you want to view it, I don't want to be disrespectful to this, that, or the other. I mean, both teams had their fair share of issues, and the Titans came out on top. But to speak to CJ Stroud's performance, I mean, I think that it's part of the problem. I've spoken to it. You said I was speaking like my dog was dying on Twitter, but I'm tweeting through it. And when I immediately following a loss, I have to be careful because I'll say something that I don't mean, and then people will accuse me of not being a real fan. But I mean, I think the issue 100% lies with the offense. As no matter what you say, the defense didn't do well. There was some plays like Levis throws a mean deep ball. I guess I'd compare Levis to Anthony Richardson. I think that there's just sometimes his deep ball is just on, and then you either stop it or you get burned and you give up points. There was 2 distinct plays where the Texans defense gave up really long touchdowns that, even as bad as the offense was, it could have been the difference between winning and losing a game. So I won't downplay that, but I don't think I stand by it. The defense is not the issue with this team. And in the press conference after the game, D'Amico went after the defense when he was asked about why the offense couldn't produce. And I don't think that's right either, but I do think it's what's expected of him as a defensive-minded coach. His first instinct when trying to fix that problem is, well, the defense could have, because he's right, like I just explained, the defense, if they made a couple of different plays, could have prevented this from going the way it did. So, but I do think it 100% falls on the offense. You can break down the offense's issues into 3 categories. We've been talking about it all season long. Interior offensive line, you could just say offensive line. I mean, it's the offensive line that's not playing very well. When Juice Scruggs is sitting in CJ's lap on the most important plays of the game, that tells you all you really need to know about how bad the offensive line is. But and then you can look at play calling. And in this game, I look at Bobby Slowick continuing to push the run because we're a run first team when it clearly isn't working against a run defense that they knew going into this game was a top tier run defense. Just because the Titans only have 2 wins doesn't mean they can't defend the run. L'Jarius Sneed was out. Most of their run defenders were still healthy for this game. And then you look at CJ Stroud, and I list those in that order because that's how I view it. So it's offensive line, root cause of all the problems. If that's right, a lot of these issues can be overcome. Bobby Slowick can call as bad of a game as he wants to, but if the offensive line can run and pass block at a level that's much better than they're doing it now, then they can overcome that by just being better at their jobs. But also CJ Stroud, a product of the offensive line to some extent, but also I think his own. It's hard to just say there's a myriad of issues on the offense, but when we look at CJ, which I listed 3rd purposely because that's about where I'd place him on the order of what's wrong with this Texans offense. Has had his fair share of issues, and you can't just look at CJ and go, like early on in the season, it was really easy to be like, oh, CJ, he had a bad game, but it was poor pass blocking. He never had time to throw. And we've reached a point in the season where, like, I don't want to say the offensive line has improved drastically, but like over the last game or 2, as bad as they've been, it's been a lot better than it's been the past few games. It's probably closer to the level of offensive line play that CJ Stroud was getting in 2023, and he's still missing some throws that he probably shouldn't. I think there's a mental element to the game that is falling off in some way in his head, and I don't really know what to make of it. But I stand by what I said. If we're looking at CJ, the only thing that he really needs to fix for me in order for this offense to turn around from his perspective is he can make as many mistakes as he wants. Just don't turn the ball over, especially not in your own 20-yard lines, on your own 20-yard line to give the other team 3 points to go into the half down 3 points. I mean, so I'm getting away from this whole it's one thing or the other with the offense. I mean, it's a combination of those three things, and in a given week it could be any varying degree of each of those three things that's causing the offense to not be good. But it's just a shame for as much talent as that offense has outside of the offensive line. I don't want to overhype the offensive line because 3 of the 5 players, or I should say 2 now because Jarrett Patterson's been pretty good. But there's a bit of a talent disparity for what's been spent on that. But I'd say that those are the 3 things that at any point, and CJ has made his fair share of contributions. So if you want to know what I think about his performance today in this season, I'd say it's just relatively not as good. And we spoke to as much last week. It's just CJ is, if this is a sophomore slump, I've seen far worse from many a great rookie seasons from quarterbacks that were followed up with just absolute garbage heap quarterback play. And this is not that bad. It is not good, but and the turnovers are the big thing for me. Looking at the rest of the game, so I feel like we've adequately discussed CJ. So I mentioned it in my answer there, but I want to get more from you on it. Are you a believer that Slowick's play calling had a heavy effect on this game? Because the general thought process is that because he ran the ball a lot against a team that is really good at defending the run, that's kind of it. And among other things that he's done all season that people are a little frustrated with. But how did you feel about the game that Bobby Slowick called today?
I think he made his mistakes. I do believe that he is definitely struggling to try to find the right mix of plays. The minute he doesn't run the football, people criticize him for not running the football. The minute
he runs it, they criticize him for running it.
Exactly.
I saw that today.
I don't know if you believe in Joe Mixon, if you believe that him getting the rock is important, then you have to stay committed to the run. I believe that this team, when they're properly running at all cylinders, wants to start, as a run first option, and then you build off of that, and that protects CJ that way. Like you spoke to the offensive line. If you let CJ sit back there and throw 50 times, he's probably getting sacked like 6 of those. So I don't know. He's trying to find a balance. I do believe Bobby does have some blame in this. But for me, these last few weeks that a lot of people are feeling are games that they're losing that they should be winning. You look at the Lions game, you look at this game today, CJ can't turn the ball over. CJ is turning the ball over at an alarming rate for me, in the sense that this isn't, a sack, strip, fumble type thing. No, these are him throwing and making throwing errors that we're not used to seeing. Do I think he can fix them? Absolutely. The first interception in the Lions game totally turned the tide. The interception that you talked about that gave 3 points, if you ask CJ, he'll tell you those are his. He's trying to phase that out. Another critical play today that CJ owned and that was on CJ, he had Joe Mixon and Tank Dell motion at the same time that took a touchdown off the board. You can blame Bobby all you want, but CJ was the dude with the football in his hand. If he does not do those things, if those 3 plays are different, both of those games are probably different. I mean, it's tough. I expect CJ to struggle some. I don't think he's just going to be this flawless quarterback his entire career. No one is. Everybody. Mahomes, Manning, Brady, you name it. They all went through their ruts. You know what I mean? I just hope that we're just seeing a couple game rut from CJ, and when he gets back to the elite play, then it overcomes some of the deficiencies that the team has. Because, like you spoke to, the line's not getting any better. Juice Scruggs was probably a better center than he is a left guard. He's struggling mightily. Now, today, I don't know what you could have asked him more to do. Shaq Mason got swatted at like a fly by Tavondre Sweat. That's a mountain of a man. I don't know what else he could have done. That's just what Tennessee is. Now, for me, I think the ball's got to come out quicker, knowing that those guys are there, holding on to the football and trying to let long routes develop, whether that be Bobby or CJ, is not going to help them deal with these issues with the line. I think you saw Will Levis deal with their issues on the offensive line by taking the 5 yard, taking the 10 yard quick slants and stuff of that nature, rolling Will Levis out of the pocket on that fourth down to get him an opportunity to run, pass, whatever. And I just don't know if Bobby's just conflicted because like he's worried about, well, if I don't do this and if I don't do that, he's trying to check all the boxes. There was a play that was called today that I just didn't even understand, where Joe Mixon was in motion going that way, and then they were going to have Shaq Mason pull, and it was just the easiest sack that defender ever had because he just had a straight shot to CJ, and there was no way that those guys were going to get there to block it. Like systematically, schematically, I don't think that play ever had a chance of working.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. That one was crazy. I think I know which one you're talking about. That was it was motion out wide to the right, and then CJ, before you could even turn and throw, that ball was hit. I mean, I think I've turned the tide. I've shifted in my view on Bobby Slowick. I've gone full rogue. I'd like to see a change with the offensive play calling. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that D'Amico, based off of his answers at the press conference, views the offense as a problem. I think that he views the defense as what they're going to, live or die by, which revives my comparison I made last week, and I brought it up on Twitter today, of this Texans team to the 2007 Giants. It's just going to be the defense carrying the load and getting CJ to a point where he doesn't turn the ball over too much so that the defense can carry the load. But looking at it, I'd be interested to see how Gerard Johnson would call a game. At the end of the day, I think what it becomes is you either at the end of the season look to move on from Bobby Slowick to Gerard Johnson, or if you don't want to move on to him, I mean, the smart thing to do, with hindsight being 2020, is instead of looking for a young, aspiring offensive coordinator, you look for a guy who, like a Jim Caldwell or a Chip Kelly, a guy who's been a head coach in the league. No matter how good they do as an offensive coordinator, they'll never have the aspirations to be a head coach because there's no team that's thinking, Jim Caldwell, that guy who coached the Colts way back when after Tony Dungy, I'd love to have him as my head coach. So I think looking for a guy like that to be your next offensive coordinator, and that's how I'm talking about it. Like I think that if the Texans, maybe they're long playing it, maybe they believe Bobby Slowick's model can work, and maybe that's why Bobby Slowick didn't take a head coaching job. He didn't think he was ready to be a head coach. He knew the offense was going to have its growing pains, and he wanted a long-term chance to get it to work. But I mean, who knows what's going on in that building? But that's how I'm going to talk about it from now on, because in my mind, if this season ends in a wild card exit or even a divisional round exit, and the offense in the playoffs it continues to be the issue and can't move the ball, if D'Amico doesn't want to fire Bobby Slowick, if I'm Nick Caserio, if I'm Cal McNair, if I'm in the upper brass of the Texans, I'm stepping in and, hey, the offensive coordinator's got to go, or you've got to go. Like, well, you can't be tied to the hip to this guy because that is what we think the issue is. But I don't know. Maybe it's a little drastic. I might cool off of that as time passes, but we're still, at time of recording, not very far removed from the game, and I'm a little frustrated with the way it went. And that my big source of it is the smug. I don't know if it was smugness. I can't quite think of the word it was, but at the press conference when Bobby Slowick a couple weeks back was asked about like adjustments and everything, and he just kind of said, "Well, football's football. Like elite teams don't really make adjustments." It's like no, people in general in life make adjustments when it's very obvious based off the research they've done that that's what's warranted. And I'm not an NFL offensive coordinator. I've never coached at the NFL level, so take this for what you will. But I mean, I could translate. Here's what I'll say: what the situation there. If I'm looking at the Titans, one, I know they're a division rival, so I'm not discounting them. I'm doing all the research to make sure that we can absolutely crush them. If I'm the offensive coordinator, I look at their run game rankings. I'm going, we could maybe try to establish the run, but if we are met with absolutely, like, there was a point in the third quarter, I looked at the leading rusher for the Texans, and it was CJ Stroud with 3 carries for 18 yards. Like, if it's the third quarter and you don't have your running back as your leading rusher, abandon the run game. Absolutely. You're losing and your running back's not your leader. Abandon the run game. Maybe go back to it after you've established a few good passes, but like it felt like every drive, there's no adjustments being made offensively in the play calling. It is consistently run, pass, run, pass. Maybe, they opened the game with a pass. I'm not saying that's every sequence, but it's consistent enough that it's frustrating to see, because one thing I'd hate to see, and this is a conversation that I saw on Twitter that I thought was interesting, is that I don't think that CJ is bad right now. I don't think that I think that he's not at his best, but I think there's a lot of factors that are playing into that. But what it's going to become is right now CJ is playing bad because of the things around him. Once you've shot his confidence and there's no coming back from it, he'll be playing bad because he's just a bad quarterback, like because he just doesn't have it anymore. Right now he's trying to find it because you've taken it away from him. You could throw it in the shredder, throw it in the garbage, shred it up, and he could never find it if it continues down this path. And then it would be one of the biggest what ifs in NFL history. Like, oh, CJ Stroud, what an excellent rookie season, and then all of a sudden we're talking about him being that guy who just never could figure it out. We've got people on Twitter asking for Deshaun Watson back. I feel like I'm reading the Bible right now, and the Texans fans are like the people of Israel looking back after crossing the Red Sea and being like, it wasn't half bad in Egypt when we were slaves. Like, I don't know, man. All that to say, right? I think that there's a lot of factors contributing to CJ being bad. I don't think it's just that he's a bad quarterback right now. I think that mentally there's a lot of things going on in that offense that are not conducive to him being successful. And then now he's progressing that way, though. And the only way to stop it would be to fix the issues. And it doesn't have to be this season, right? I've said as much. I project the Texans to be in LA in Super Bowl 61. I think that that's a reasonable goal. I think, and Tom said as much before the show, I think maybe we moved the timeline up a little bit too much based off season hype. But that all changes if after this season the Texans watch what was put on the field and go, yeah, we're right back with Bobby Slowick in this exact same offensive line, and CJ will just be CJ. It's like, no, CJ will be a shell of himself because he'll have to go sit behind this offensive line and listen to Bobby Slowick call for a halfback draw 3 times in a row and then punt it. Like, I don't know. So yeah, I think that this Texans team could afford to do some changes. I don't think it's going to happen this season. But if there was one that could happen without firing Bobby Slowick, it's definitely giving play calling duties to Gerard Johnson.
What makes you think Gerard Johnson can call an NFL game?
I don't know. There's not there, but
just because he's a quarterback's coach?
No, that's not it. You know what it is? It's this. I have no reason to believe that Gerard Johnson can call a game based off any experience, but Bobby Slowick came over here as a passing game coordinator from the 49ers, and if there's one thing he does not call very well, it is the passing game. So I had reason to believe that Bobby Slowick was going to be able to call plays very well based off of his experience, and it's not gone very well this season. It's deteriorated because people figured him out and he's not adjusting. So here's what Gerard Johnson brings. He's never called a game before. So what is anyone going to know about how he's going to call a game? Nothing. For all I know, he could suck at it. But and that's why I don't think they'll do it. And the reason I don't think they'll do it is I don't think they think Bobby Slowick's a problem. And if they don't think Bobby Slowick's a problem, there's no reason to test anything else before firing him this offseason because his job security is there. He's just going to be the Texans offensive coordinator after this season is done. So, but if I was in charge, which we're fans. We've never done anything at the NFL level. Nothing I say carries any weight because I don't have, just like Gerard Johnson not having called plays, I've never ran an NFL franchise, but if I was watching what was happening on the field, I'd be having conversations with D'Amico. I'd be having conversations with Bobby and Nick, and I'd be like, hey, why is the offense awful? And if D'Amico hit me with the defense could be better, I'm like, no, I know. Everything can be better, but the offense sucks right now. What are we doing to fix that? And if Bobby hits me with good coordinators don't make adjustments, I'd fire him right there. But if I'm reasonable and I don't want to fire him right there and I want to see it through, I'd say, hey, D'Amico, as your boss, I'm going to highly recommend you give Gerard Johnson a chance to call plays. Get him ready. Not this next week. Just tell him that he needs to be prepared to do it. And then the following week, I need to see him call plays for a game. And if he does any bit better than Bobby, fire Bobby. Get him out of here. That's how I would do it. But that's me being a fan and not having ever been in the organization, in the field. I've no experience there, so maybe they're onto something. The Texans also employed Gary Kubiak for a lot longer than most people thought they should have, and it resulted in quite a few playoff runs before Matt Schaub had, pick six, after pick six, and then eventually ended both of his and Gary's time in Houston. But the patience is the name of the game has been for the Texans ownership for a really long time. So maybe that's what they'll do. But I'm not patient. I want to win right now. That's me. So
I don't know what to do for you, sir. I really don't. You can't look around the league and just expect greatness every week. I mean, you saw all these good teams lose to bad football teams this week. And while I'll say Bobby Slowick has issues, I'll say Bobby Slowick may not be the answer for CJ Stroud, but to just arbitrarily go, you know what? You hang out with quarterbacks, you call the game. I mean, at that point, you might as well let one of the fans call them, see if they could do it. Because
here's what I'll tell you too. One minute. Let's look at precedents. The Lions' turnaround truly began when they fired what was perceived as a pretty good offensive coordinator until about week 9 of 2021. They dropped him and they brought Ben Johnson in to call games. And now Ben Johnson is the hottest. He should have been a head coach this past hiring cycle, and he will be next time. And that was a decision that was made in the middle of the season to hand him play calling duties, and it went really well. Am I saying that Gerard Johnson's guaranteed to do that? No, but I mean, if I imagine, if you will, John, that you were, or John, good grief, where am I going? Tom, imagine, if you will, that you were aspiring to be an NFL head coach and you were on the offensive side of the ball. You're quarterback's coach for the Texans for 2 years. It's been a year and a half. Would you not have in your head like a way that you would call a football game? Would you not be watching everything Bobby Slowick's doing and being like, well, that's not how I would have drawn it up? Would you have an offensive game plan in mind? Because I would have everything thought out about every situation possible, and I would have and I would be in Bobby Slowick's ear because I'd want him to look good. Because guess what? If he gets hired somewhere else, I'm next man up. I'll interview for the job and I'll get it. And I'll tell him, I say, Bobby just left. You know why he did so good? I was in his ear every play. I was giving him every play that he called because I thought he called some dumb plays. But and maybe it speaks to Gerard Johnson that Bobby Slowick is not calling good plays and he's not doing anything to fix it. So who knows? And we're getting wild
how
now
do you
here.
know what's going on in the Texans locker room? How do you know what
don't.
they're saying?
I don't.
Then
Tom,
relax.
I've never claimed to know what's going on in the Texans locker room. This is all speculative. In case that wasn't clear,
But these are impossible conversations to have. Like, we can't sit here and blame Gerard Johnson for not telling him or not having a plan in place or assuming that that's what he's supposed to have. Like,
no, that is all. If it was me, right? Like, if I was Gerard Johnson and I'm in CJ's here, I'm already coaching up CJ. I know what CJ likes to do. Take this for example, right? Like, just looking on the internet. If you look at anyone who's ever talked about football schemes and plays on Twitter, the general consensus is that the Texan scheme flaw in terms of how it associates with C.J. Stroud is that C.J. Stroud's a gunslinger and he needs a spread system in order to really just let the ball fly. And the Texans are let's put 3 tight ends on the field and see if we can run it kind of team. And so hey man, it's 3rd and 12. Why don't we spread it out and see if C.J. can just air it out instead of calling a screen?
They can't block for him now. There's no way on God's green earth that if they spread it out, they're going to be able to block for him. This is the problem that they have. These are the issues that the Texans have. They cannot block for him. So you can't call these exotic plays where you got guys that can't block for him. They're trying to work with a defunct offensive line. And until they fix that, which can't be fixed during the regular season, they can't go out and use draft capital. There's no one on the street coming in to help. You can't ask them to overhaul all the junk and hope that, oh, well, this will work. Just let CJ cook. Now, what they can do and what they've shown to be able to do is run the football. So that's what they're trying to lean into because their defense is Super Bowl caliber. They know they're limited by what I believe is the offensive line. But to assume, you know what, we're just running the wrong place. We just need to spread this thing out, open it wide up. CJ would be sacked 11 billion times. They're trying to protect him with all these tight ends. I think it's wrong, but that's what they're trying to do. Now, if CJ didn't get rid of the ball quick, it doesn't matter what you call because he's going to take a sack. And that's what I'm seeing. If you want to be upset with CJ Stroud right now because he has to realize what he's working with and use that. How many times can you stand back there for 3, 4, 5 seconds and expect not to get sacked?
I think you're so spread it out, right? Spread the offense out. Give him help too. Leave a running back in the backfield. Put a tight end out there, and then stack a bunch of receivers in a spread type formation. But you need to be what was it? We talked about this before. Bobby has asked tight ends to block defensive ends, which is not a good recipe. There's been a lot of blocking schemes that seem like they kind of leave the defensive lineman open to just have a free run at CJ. So I'm saying change the way that it's run in the ways that you can. Provide more protection to CJ to give him time to throw. If they're running these 3 tight end sets to try and throw it, and they leave like 2 tight ends back and a running back to block for CJ, and they still can't block, then yeah, scrap it. Call the season and just hope that your defense can get you pretty far before you inevitably leave the playoffs. But I'm not seeing that. What I'm seeing is CJ getting awful pass protection with no help to the offensive line that is known to be a liability protecting him. And then I'm watching these play calls of runs and screens. I will say, a screen on 3rd and 12 to Nico Collins is never a wasted screen because Nico Collins is Nico Collins. But every other player they've ever thrown the ball to on a screen on 3rd and 12 is a wasted play. And where I see merit to it is when we're up. If the Texans are up and your 3rd and 12, you're just trying to be conservative, but you don't want to run the ball, sure, throw the screen. There's times where it makes sense. It's not always nonsensical, but it feels like there's a lot of times where it is nonsensical to run it that way. So I mean, I don't know. My issue with the play calling has progressed over the course of this season to a point where I'm a little more frustrated with it than I was before. So, and like I said, I'm not trying to call out Gerard Johnson by saying that he should be in Bobby Slowick's ear. I'm just saying that if I was Gerard Johnson, that's what I would be doing because I'd be trying to I'm trying to make Bobby Slowick look really good so that this offensive coordinator position opens up and I can move up without having to move to another city. That's where I'm thinking about it. But oh well. Let's talk about the defense. We didn't really talk about it much. This Texans team has, like you said, Super Bowl caliber defense. Are you concerned about? So Jalen Petrie went out pretty early. Are you concerned about? And I believe it's a shoulder injury. How that's going to impact this Texans defense moving forward?
I read it was a pectoral thing, which makes it sound way worse. I'm concerned about whoever replaces the person that replaces Jalen Petrie. So Jimmy Ward got moved down, played that star role, looked phenomenal. I think that could be what Jimmy Ward should be the rest of the season if Jalen Petrie's out. The problem is Eric Murray became the dude in coverage as a safety, and he was barbecue chicken in the second half. So I'm not necessarily worried about what that nickel position is because I think Jimmy Ward showed he could play it. I think you saw him in the back-to-back plays. He was in the backfield the play before the interception and then the interception. It looked like Jalen Petrie light, which I thought was great. However, you can't give up a 70-yard touchdown on one play to Chig Okonkwo and no one be within a country mile of this dude while he's galloping down the middle of the football field where a safety should have been. And I think D'Amico is only talking the defense up, which I know you hated, but I think that he's only speaking to it because that's all he can control. He's not an offensive guy. That is not an area that he messes with. I know some people think that's dumb, but I think he believes to let that man do his job and I'll do my job, and together we'll have a good football team. I also don't think he meddles in special teams, but Frank Ross is a really good special teams coach. So let them work. I've seen, this is probably the most frustrated I've seen D'Amico Ryans be in a football game in a long time. He was very frustrated at half. He was very frustrated at the end of that football game. I think he was really shocked at how poorly his team played. And I imagine he is going to be as fired up as he's possibly been on the negative side. You know, he always brings the passion from the positive side. I imagine he's going to get into some people verbally more than he has recently because, you know, say what you want, offense, liability, whatever. They should have scored 21 points today or 24 points today. 24 points should be enough to win you football games in the league. Giving up 30 points a game, you're not going to win many football games. So the Texans put up gaudy numbers, right? They had a pick six. They had 8 sacks. They did all kinds of things. They also gave up phenomenally huge chunk plays. And when you give up 70-yard bombs, you know, it makes up for some errors. So, yes, on one end, the defense played well, but on the other end, you can't give up 30 points. They scored on their first 3 possessions.
Yeah. I feel, I mean, and the Texans got off to a pretty hot start, but it did feel like early on the defense was pretty meh. Overall, good game from the defense. And I mean, there's been a lot of those games where the defense puts up those kind of numbers. I mean, we saw it against the Lions, where they get the stops, they do what they need to do. But like when they're on the field, sometimes maybe they're giving up a lot more than they probably should in terms of those chunk plays. And it ends up not really meaning much that they got all those turnovers because they're letting them go. Now, in the Lions game, I'd say that was more a case of bad field position affecting the defense. And we talk about all the time the atrophy that defenses go through over time as the offense kind of leaves them high and dry. So there could be some of that playing into it. But I still overall don't think the defense was, or at least has been, the issue with this team. I think we both agree it's Super Bowl caliber defense, so there's no real point arguing over it. I think we're on the same side there, but I see your point on that. I can see why D'Amico went in on it. It's what he can control, and it was not probably as good as it could have been. And I said as much at the beginning of the show. I mean, there was at least 1 or 2 plays from the defense that if they make those plays, this game results differently. And being able to get those close wins, even if it's against a trash team like the Titans, is still very much what you want to be able to do as a team. But on that note, I believe that's all we have to say about this game. I don't want to talk about it anymore because I'm trying to go on to Jacksonville, keep it in the division, but maybe come away with a win. But yeah, do you have anything more to say before we kind of bring this thing to a close?
As bad as all of this was, you know, in the end, and people don't like to hear this, but it happens every season. You get teams that have turmoil and they have games where they put a stinker out there, they figure it out, and then they're one of the last teams standing. The Texans still have all the talent in the world to do what they need to do. And while this loss stings twice as much because it was Tennessee, and you know, they're still first place of the division. They still basically have a 3-game lead on the division. It's going to take a lot for them to not be a playoff team. I still believe that once you get to the playoffs, it's 0-0 and you find a way to win games. Now, their defense, when whole, will have them in every game. Can their offense make enough plays to score just enough points? We'll see. You know, like I said, I look around the league and Pittsburgh lost. Pittsburgh's found a way to win all season long. I look around the league. Kansas City needed a last-second field goal to beat Carolina. Carolina is really, really bad. Dallas, who could not score any points at all in their own building against these same Texans a week ago, went to Washington and beat the Redskins. This stuff happens all season long. Their fan base is probably filled the exact same way. Now, the perk, the bonus, we wake up tomorrow, first place of the division, still everything to play for out in front. They play up to their competition. You saw it with the Lions. You saw it with the Packers. I think they'll play up to the next teams following Jacksonville, which that gets a whole lot harder. We'll see. They win one of those games, it changes your opinion.
100%. I think that, and there's a lot of football left, and those are the kind of teams where when you see a win or a close game against them, you start to feel a little better about the Texans going into those playoff atmospheres. And for my final note, the Colts lost to the Lions 24-6. The Texans are the only team that played the Lions within one score in the entire AFC South. I think that if you look at the scores of those games, you get a feel for ranking the AFC South pretty accurately, as you should, with a Lions team that probably should have lost to the Texans. But I don't know. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. The Texans should have been better. But either way, it's disappointing. But no placement was lost in the division. The Texans are still in a good spot. They've already swept the Colts, so even if it comes down to the last week, it would be against the Titans in Tennessee. So I don't know. There's a lot of positives to take from this. I'm excited to see the Texans go into Jacksonville, where the Tank Dell mania kind of started. Hopefully, maybe reignite that in that game. And I don't know. I think Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be out for that game. I'm not really sure when he's coming back, or if he came back this week. I'd have to take a look, but we'll talk about it on our preview of the matchup on Friday, so make sure you tune in for that. Thanks for tuning into this recap of the Titans game. If you are looking for us on social media, I am at M1 Texans fan on Instagram and at James Roy NFL on Twitter. Tom is at TCTom1 on Instagram and at Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we've been the Bullpen. If you're looking to get in on some Texans gear giveaways, I've got my subscription on Instagram, so you should get in on that. Giving away an H hat this month. That's coming up soon. I should probably advertise that more so that there's more people that get in on it. But right now, there's only 15 subscribers. It is quite literally your best chance at winning anything that I give away because there's so few people involved in it. So hopefully that changes and there's more people soon. But either way. And yeah, as always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.